So, like everybody else, I heard the news a few hours ago and I had to make a video about it. So, first of all, I just want to apologize. And the only reason why I say that is because, this was very emotional, more emotional than I suspected. This has come very suddenly, so no one was really preparing for something like this. And I went to go and watch some videos about other people talking about the subject. Akira Toriyama dying, the maker of Dragon Ball, Chrono Trigger, and many other loved franchises. And when I was watching the videos in the morning, some people were being just too matter of fact about it, and that made me want to click off. But I've kind of hopefully I've got that all out of my system and I don't plan on bringing that onto this video. So I will not be offended if you feel the same way about this, because potentially I'm going to be making a video that I wouldn't have wanted to see when I was in that emotional state. But let me get on with this. So Dragon Ball, biggest inspiration for everything for me. I think that that's something that I've always said. I've always said that to people. Shonen Jump and Nintendo, Dragon Ball, and Legend of Zelda. Um, but it's kind of as all of these things, yeah, all the thoughts have been running through my head. I think that because of the author that Akira was, the amount of dedication that him as an individual had to make to create Dragon Ball. So obviously he's had people surrounding him, but this is so the product of an individual and their mindset and their intentions as it relates to them creating their art. It's kind of just hitting me how specific an inspiration this one individual was on the whole of my life as it relates to business, as it relates to creativity. And I'm not even trying to be blasphemous, but like as it relates to spirituality, as it relates to psychology, as it relates to you know um, human interactions, human alien interactions. Yeah, it was just such a big part of everything for me, which is why like I had to make this video. And I can't promise that this video isn't just about me and my connection to it. There isn't going to be any new information as it relates to what's happened. Um, but I think that yeah, there's something positive in the inevitable outpour of love that is going to happen now, and I want to be part of that. I want to be part of, that tiny fractional quantum amount of happiness that the people surrounding him can get from everybody saying what it is that they loved about it and what it meant to them. And I also kind of need to get it out of me. There's, like I'm saying, it's been so much a part of my life in every single aspect that even though I've always gone out on about it, there's been loads of things that I've kept to myself for no particular reason apart from like, is anybody even really interested? And so that's what I mean. Like at this point, this is the time to kind of just put it all out there, and also for me to kind of get my head around it a little bit, just because of like how emotional it got me. I think it will be good for me anyway, but also um, because I want to continue making stuff in the future, and I think it's going to be good for me to kind of solidify around what it actually meant to me, so that hopefully again I can get a little bit better in my creativity as well. So I was born in 1998 and I was born in London. and I would end up moving to Corsica, which is a little island below France, in 1996. And so that's where, you know, I first came into contact with Dragon Ball. So I remember before I went out to Corsica, one of the so my mum had a friend who was out there, and her son came to London. So as far as I'm aware, what happened was, in Corsica they had a scheme where if you got into either a London, Paris, or Italian university for fashion, then the Corsican government would pay for your course. And so this guy, he was doing that. He got into a London university, and so he came to my house when I was living in London. And it's weird because this is what I mean. This is one of my real vivid memories as a child. So I must be like 4 or 5, and my 2 sisters, my mum, and this guy Jeremy, they're all talking in the kitchen, kind of like a hubbub, blah 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 blah. Everyone's just doing whatever. So I was small, and back then there was like a small TV on top of my fridge. And so this advert came on, and the advert was like some advert for the third world in Africa, and you know they're just showing like the effed up situation out there. And then at one point, they put an injection inside of a child, and it made me cry. And it kind of like stopped the atmosphere in the room. Everyone's like looking at this little child crying or whatever. And so Jeremy comes down to my level, and he's like, "Oh, you know, you're going to be moving to Corsica. What do you think about it?" And I was kind of like not really feeling it. So that kind of made me a little bit more upset. And he was like, "Do you like cartoons?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, you're gonna see your favorite cartoon when you go out there." And I was like, "What do you mean? What is it?" And he was like, "Dragon Ball. Have you ever heard of it?" And I was like, "No." And he was just like, he was so enthusiastic and so sure that I was gonna see my favorite cartoon. It was really like, it made me feel better. Like, and I remember, so when he said to me Dragon Ball, what I imagined, and Red Bull didn't exist at the moment, but literally what I imagined in my head was a dragon and a bull, like a male cow, like buffalo bull, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking of this Dragon Ball, and that was what was in my head. I was like, "Oh, what's that?" But yeah, this guy's energy was so adamant that I was about to go and like, I was about to come in contact with my new favorite cartoon. And so I moved out to Corsica, and he wasn't wrong. Like, out in Corsica, in France, and as far as I'm aware, in Spain, in Italy, like it was already ting out there. Like it was already the one out there. Like it already popped fully. So you gotta imagine, by the time I get out there, GT's already finished, but it is just a thing everywhere. And so what actually got me into Dragon Ball was the trading cards. So I got, so let me see. So these ones here that I've kept, and I moved house a couple of years ago, and so I've kind of got all my inspiration surrounding me, not too far, another room. So I'm going to be grabbing stuff, but it's like these cards. These are actually the ones that I actually had in France. So these are the ones that I managed to keep. So my favorite one. Oh, let's not ruin them now for this. Oh, it's not gonna. How do they do this thing? How do they do this? Hold on, let me turn this light off. No, that's not the one, is it? Hold on, let me see. We're gonna have to get the tackers on this one. Let's see if I can. Okay, this is not it's not the best quality, but yeah, these trading cards here. So what else have I got? Yeah, maybe this one here, shiny baby Goku with Gohan. These were the ones here, card ass ones. So I got some more. Let me see. These are the actual ones. Yeah, these were all ones that I actually had when I was out in France. Gojira. Let me pick some more. Show you a couple more. So, out in Corsica, out in France, these types specifically, these were like their own currency. So when I moved out to Corsica, my first entrepreneurial thing is I used to sell sweets between England and Corsica. But the other one was these. Like, people were buying these for money. And it just kickstarted this entrepreneurial thing inside of me, because I just understood this flow of currency through these. There was Dragon Ball cards, there was Pogs, there was sweets, and there was the food that everybody used to eat. And so it was these cards that made me fall in love with them. So I think this might be mine, let me just check. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I've got quite a few here. So these ones, so these were the types of cards that were there, but these are actually ones that I bought since lockdown. And so, when was this one made? I think these are actually like some 2018 2018 reprints that they did from like for some celebratory editions. These weren't actually the ones from the time, but these were the styles that were popping. So there was the card ass ones. So that's what this would count as, with the power levels. I'm sorry that the video is so crap. You can't see it. And then there were these ones. I don't even know what the technical names for these other ones were. And yeah, it just sparked something inside of me that is just stayed with me in terms of my life being surrounded by this thing about entrepreneurship, creativity, storytelling, and what I would then find to be called transmedia. And that's the thing, is that my favorite thing in the world is transmedia. My favorite thing in the world is huge. Oh, look at this one. Remember that film? I love expanded stories that go across different mediums. It's just the best thing for me. And it started with Dragon Ball. And I had a lot of fun out in Corsica. And the culture, it was a big part of the culture, young, teenage. And so a year and a half later, I moved back to England. I moved to Bristol. So now this is 1998. And I'm saying to everyone, because everyone's into their cartoons and da-da-da, and I'm like, these are all just crap compared to what I just been watching. I've been out here watching Dragon Ball. Do you not know about it? Nobody knew about it. No one knew about it. I get to secondary school in 1999, telling people there no one knows about it. And then halfway through the first year in school, Dragon Ball comes out. And everyone was like, oh, I know what you're saying. But I'm not going to lie, for me, when Dragon Ball came out in England, the dub just threw me off. So everyone who knows about the French dubs, the Spanish dubs, and the Italian dubs, in their delivery, it was just a lot more like the Japanese delivery, just in terms of how they actually did the voices. Just for example, just like the standard thing of the Goku is voiced by a woman type vibe. That was the kind of tone that they went for. So when it first came out, it was like jarring. It was just like, it was too different. And you got to remember as well, when I went out into Corsica and I seen it, GT had already finished. So I hadn't seen anything in chronological order. I was messing with the Dragon Ball cards. Watch an episode anytime it comes on, because I get, of course, no internet, like, so it's no on demand thing. So if anything comes on, we're watching it. But in terms of like its place on TV, it wasn't the newest thing out, so it would constantly be advertising stuff, and it was about like the videos. So this is one of the videos actually that I had at the time in France. Dragon Ball Z Le Film. Huh? And yeah, hold tight everybody in France who knows about, because that's who used to get it popping, TFI. So, I'd have things like these videos, and that's how we were consuming them. We were consuming them like out of context, really. Do you know what I mean? I was young. There was a lot of things like back then when I used to play games. I didn't used to play them to completion. Like if I got a secondhand game and it had another save file, I would just start it there. I never had big brothers to like take me through those things and give me the breakdowns and almost like take the piss out of you because you don't really know what's going on. We just love the character design, love the vibes, love the fights, love the music, and so yeah, when it came into England, it's like I wasn't following it straight away because the voices jarred me, and I already knew what was gonna happen. Like I knew what the transformations were, like I knew about GT, like I knew about Dragon Ball when Z was out and all of that kind of stuff. And then actually what happened was Princess Mononoke came out, and when Princess Mononoke came out, I watched that, and that kind of, it was like it kind of helped contextualize it in my slightly older brain about, okay, this is anime. That's what this is. There's cartoons and there's anime, and Japan is where this comes from, and there are dubs, and the dubs get localized and they spin it in their own different. So as soon as I watched Princess Mononoke, and that became one of my favorite films, it helped me just like contextualize everything about it. And then I just went super back into Dragon Ball and, ended up re-consuming it all. So I remember I was watching this thing with my mum, and it was about not the electric scooters, but the original scooters. We were watching this little documentary about this entrepreneur whose dad used to move around. And he bought loads of these like fold-up scooters from one ends in the world that happened and started selling them in another ends. And so when I was watching that, I was saying to my mum, I was like, look, like there's all of this stuff that I know is going to start getting popping from France to England. We were watching it together, and I was like, would you go over there? I'll get some money off my sister, and would you lend me some money and buy loads of stuff in France that I know would get popping in England? My mum agreed. And so basically I wanted my mum to go and buy Dragon Ball Z stuff, French bangers and French sweets for me to sell down in England. Now, the majority of my profit I was guaranteeing from the bangers, because I knew like bangers are illegal in England. You're not allowed to have them. So for those that don't know, in France they have these, it just looks like little mini dynamite sticks, and you literally light them and they explode. And so, in Corsica, I used to live on the side of a mountain. I used to have 7 neighbors like over a mile, and I had a forest in my back garden. My brethren at the end had a mountain on the side of his. My neighbor had a lake. That was the kind of life we were living. So bangers was something you'd have. You get some bangers, put it in an anthill, put it in this. We'd all doing it. So my mum's coming back from France on the coach with all of this stuff to sell, and one person on the coach is trying to smuggle in bare cigarettes. So everybody gets searched. So my mum gets searched, and bare of the bangers get taken off her. So then when she comes, that's where I was planning to make most of my money. And so I have the bangers that I've got, and then I start selling them in school. I'm making a little bit of money. Like they're all selling like I thought I would. Then I get in trouble with my school for obviously selling these illegal bangers. But I did sell most of them, but that didn't like account for all the money that I borrowed. So I paid off my mum. I paid off my sister, but I couldn't pay off my mum. And so my mum kind of was like pissed at me, and so she held back loads of the stuff that she had. And then, sometime later, she ended up giving it back to me. And I remember that was these. So I had these Dragon Ball VHSs. So again, this was like what I was watching out in France, in Corsica. But this wasn't actually the ones that I had out there. So these are the films. Cooler. Yeah, these were sick. And so I remember going round to my friend's house and showing them, because obviously everyone's at this point is getting their drips and drabs. Favorite one. Everyone's getting, they're getting their Dragon Ball as the episodes, as Toonami allows them to do it. So I remember rocking up to one of my friends' houses with one of these videos. And so because they've got the international lock on them, the videos played in black and white. And obviously they were in French. And imagine, it was so sick that even in black and white and even in French, with people not even understanding it, they're like, yeah, this is sick. So, I got that opportunity. And again, it like that spark of just creativity and inspiration about how the culture that I'm in Bristol in the UK, and these inspirations, and how I want to make like my own versions of these sorts of things. So I remember that year Pokemon came out, Pokemon cards came out, and because I knew like these cards were the Pokemon cards beforehand in terms of money, price, and all of that type of stuff. So when Pokemon cards came out, I knew what was going to happen. And again, I just ended up making so much money because of it. And like, it's crazy because I've still got my, 151, 1999 Pokemon cards, and they're worth more money now. So it's just nuts that like these creative investments, it was all sparked from the actual love that me and the world had for this franchise and how long lasting it had been. So move forward, and I end up starting my first company when I'm 15 years old. And it was like twofold. One, it was about helping the community. And two, it was about me trying to create these story worlds. And, I'll skip over that bit because that, again, this was the inspiration. That's where I ended up. 10 years, I ended up doing that for 10 years. So a lot of filming, a lot of music, a lot of filming, and, political activism in the community, creative and community activism. And so at one point I get the interest of a university who wants to do research on me, and that was part of something called the Creative Citizen, where they wanted to look at how I was using technology, effectively, social media aspects, and actually affecting the community. And so it was part of that research, that's when I first heard the word transmedia. And as part of that research, I got to spend 15 grand to do whatever I want with. And so I ended up making my first comic, Indigo Babies. And so, yeah, in that time, because I got that money and I got that time, I'd gone so far down the line of like community work and helping other people, I'd kind of lost sense of what it is that I wanted to do. And so when I got the opportunity, again, it's like that Dragon Ball DNA in there. I was like, I want to create story worlds. And I've seen, my experience tells me that it starts with these graphic novels. It starts with comics. It starts with manga. It starts with sequential art. So I ended up having a comic arm of what I was doing. So now I was doing teaching and mentoring through comic creation, creating my own comics, allowing other people to create comics. And so what happened is in that research, the comic that I made, literally everything that could go wrong went wrong. Every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. But at that point, I'd already been doing business for long enough to know that if you do something the first time and everything goes right, that's dodgy, because it's almost, that's just a bit lucky. That means that there's potholes that you don't know. The fact that everything went wrong the first time I made a comic gave me so much knowledge about making comics. And also what it meant is that we ended up, the printers was one of the best printers in this side of the UK that I'm on. And because of the passion that I had for how I wanted this thing to come out, the owner of the whole company ended up coming to my studio to deliver my first prints for the check. And because of that, I ended up like dealing directly with his son, who was like the actual operational manager. So he was more like the CEO. He ended up giving me this deal where I used to be able to get comics printed through him, but he wouldn't charge me tax if it was a small enough amount, and he would allow me to do small runs. So I was making professional comics, and I could go to him with as little as 10, 15, 30. I mean, let me just... So these are all the comics that I published, minus 2 of them. And so, you know, there were comics that were like, let me see, I should have the first one in here. Yeah. So this was the first one, Indigo Babies, that I was talking about here. So we had things that were kind of on this level. But then, you know, there were things that we were making, that I was making just with young people to like build confidence, create community, and all of that sort of stuff. So went down that realm, and again, it was just super fulfilling to be able to do that. And this was all coming for this drive to want to be able to create my own story worlds, and, you know, create that same feeling and attachment for character that I'd got through having the, you know, the pleasure of interacting with the story world that is the Dragon Ball universe. And so from that point, it kind of was a milestone, and, you know, progressed from there. I've got a bit of animation made. And yeah, you know, that was just that was the effect that it's had on me, and it's still kind of rolling through. So I end up getting to a certain point where, you know, I'm seeing young people that I've taught become teachers themselves, and they're going on and they're teaching. I'm seeing creative people excelling. And so I get to the stage where I'm like, I really want to focus on what it is that I want to make. So at that point, I start looking into tech and game design, because that's what it was, is like these story worlds, it's the comics, it's the animations, it's the computer games. So I was like looking into that. And by the time, basically, it gets to like 2018, 2019. And 2019 ends up being like the best year for me financially. I end up kind of making sort of 40k through here and there, working, a little bit of teaching, this, that, and the other. I managed to do that. And then I ended up getting one job for 50k to make 6 comics for a cybersecurity company. So that was like the best year that I'd ever had. And I thought, yes, I'm going to be able to like really think about my story world now and kind of get this out there. Then obviously 2020 happened. So I was being flown out to LA to help someone with video production. I had a flight planned for Japan, and 2020 happened. So it felt like a bit of a kick in the teeth because you know, to spend 20 years kind of climbing and then finally get there and then everything lock off. So like another thing was when I was getting into the technology, I was like, I want to be part of the next stage of animation. Like I want to, whatever that means. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it might be like a Disney thing. So Disney created Disney World and he expanded the world of animation through Disney World. So it wasn't through, so whether it was through a type of animation or like expanding the worlds, I wanted to be part of that. And I found my place in that. I stumbled upon these holograms and I was doing research and I got paid to research these holograms. And I'm like, I'm here, I'm doing this new bit of animation. And then it's like going up and then it just stops for 2020. And so, you know, I kind of collected my thoughts and I thought, okay, even though it felt like a kick in the teeth, I was like, well, this is my best financial year. I could have not had my best financial year this year. And so I decided to take a pause. I had enough money to be able to pause. I followed my instinct and invested in cryptocurrency at the time, which benefited me at the time, which gave me more. So I had enough money to live for a year. And then through my investments in cryptocurrency, I was like, I've probably got enough to live for 2 years. And so I was like, rather than stressing about what's going on, I'm going to kind of like leave it. And so this hologram research that I did, I was meant to be touring around the UK for 3 months and that all got locked off. But I tried to stay calm for 2 years and just like let it off. And then, you know, it gets to 2022, end of 2021, and I'm starting to like look for things, and it's you know, I can kind of see this. I can't live without anything coming in forever. So now I actively start trying to go out and see stuff, and I'm just getting failure after failure, rejection after rejection through research and bits of work, and then I'm starting trying to get normal jobs and rejections. And so then at a point last year, I ended up hitting my lowest point, like really, really, really low. And yeah, there was just this particular day, which is just like the lowest that I've ever felt. And I just remember on that day, seeing a message, and it was on Akira's birthday. And so, you know, that day I just couldn't bring myself to do anything. I could, you know, at that point, even me doom scrolling was like exercise. That was me doing something. But I saw that, and I thought, wow, it's the maker of Dragon Ball's birthday. That's kind of crazy. And so then I just started Googling his name, and then, you know, everyone knows he doesn't really do that many interviews, but I ended up finding like an interview that I hadn't seen before. And in there he starts talking about the you know, what the actual conditions were like when he was creating Dragon Ball, and like the state and the mind state he was in. And I think at one point he was talking about however either it was over like 10 days or 14 days when he'd only had like 4 hours in total. He would get like a half an hour sleep and continue. And I don't know, like that was just it was just the thing that got me over it. And it was like it was crazy, because at that point I was like, this thing has been my inspiration for the whole of my life. And now here at my lowest point, it's like even without trying, just the existence of the hard work, just the fact that the hard work produced the fruit is still allowing me to get this level of inspiration. You know, because it's like at that moment, I just thought, so what if I'm in 30 times gravity? So what if it feels like 100 times gravity in here? You know, so what if I'm in the hyperbolic time chamber and I feel super isolated? Like this is where this stuff gets created, you know? Like I was trying to imagine. I was like, damn, I wonder what saga that was. I wonder what episode that, like, wouldn't it be crazy if your favorite aspect of Dragon Ball was created in those times when Akira was going through his deepest and his darkest points? So, you know, and that was less than a year ago. And so that's, I think, you know, when I think about how I was feeling this morning, it was I was embarrassed at how upset I was. I think that's the reason why I needed to go online, knowing that I knew there would be an outpour. But it's like I actually really, I don't get like this about famous people, but like I actually needed to see that it was affecting other people because of how much it was affecting me. And it's somebody that I've never met, and it's somebody that has already produced. Do you know? I mean, like I'm saying, when I first seen Dragon Ball, GT had already finished. That's how poignant these stories were. Like I was already late, and it had already changed my whole psychology. So yeah, it was. I didn't really know how to feel about it this morning because I was like, is it the fact that he was 68 that makes this so sad for me? Is it the fact that he was still creating that feels sad? Is it that me as an individual wants more stories from him and knows that that will never happen? Is that what's making me feel sad? Because he obviously had such a full life in that sense. He made so much impact. He left such a tangible legacy. The sadness for his death was always going to be there, but it just felt so overwhelming. I just couldn't really put my finger on why it was affecting me so much. And I still don't really think I have, but I just don't mind it so much now, just because it's like it is. I'm just realizing how much it's like it's literally one of the core aspects of my personality, my being, my behavior, my output towards the world, all of it. So Future Trunks is my favorite character. Archetypal. Future Trunks, Link. So when I was in Corsica, we used to, everybody would have the thing and they'd be like, who's your favorite character? And obviously, most people they're gonna come through with a Goku, and most people are gonna come through with a Vegeta. That was we was 6 years old. They're gonna go for those, and so I'm a bit anti. I was the kind of person who was like, if everybody else's favorite color is red, then mine's gonna be blue. So like I knew I didn't want to pick Goku or Vegeta, so I ended up picking Gotrunks. And at the time, that was the thing. So when we were having all the arguments, my thesis at the time was, well, Gotrunks is gonna go SS3, which means he probably could beat Vegeta. I don't know if that's facts, probably not. But that's what I used to say at the time. So then as I was growing up a bit, I was like, at a certain point, I couldn't figure out whether it was Goten or Trunks that was my favorite. And yeah, no, it was, in the end I realized that it was always Future Trunks. And I've analyzed it a lot within myself. So the archetype that I've broken it down to is, I just call it the hero of time archetype. And it's something that I see in all shows now. So, for Future Trunks and Link are the classic aspects of the hero of time archetype for me. But for example, like in Naruto, Itachi and Sasuke would be the hero of time. In the show Heroes, the guy Hero is the hero of time. And for those who've seen these things, you're probably seeing the connection. It's the one with the sword, the one who's time traveling. But there's also other aspects of it. So as I keep saying, when I first seen Dragon Ball, GT would have already completed. So when Dragon Ball Super came out, that was obviously the first time that I was able, and a lot of us were able to watch new episodes of Dragon Ball with everybody as it was going around. So when the arc came in and the arc was focusing around Future Trunks, that was like perfect for me. Like I was loving it. Even when those crazy bits of animation were happening at the start, like me personally, one, I found that animation hilarious. But two, also, I didn't mind that animation because I was just thinking, well, if my favorite story ever has this level of animation, this is all obtainable. And I'm just like aware of how much effort it takes to make these things. This is the whole point is like it literally drains people's health to create these story worlds. So, you know, when it was coming out, like I just loved every aspect of Super. And yeah, going through the saga, I'm aware of it because obviously now I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, okay, I've constructed this view in my head about this archetype that revolves around Future Trunks and what it means and who he is and how that relates to me. And so obviously now I'm watching this new series and I'm thinking, okay, now I get to see whether my feelings, my intentions actually relate to the character or if it's just something that I'm putting on or, you know, maybe a bit of both. And then right at the end of that saga, yeah, it just got solidified. So the point where Goku Black is fused with Goku Black is the fusion. He's fused. I just pronounce it like Zetsu. And so first of all, Trunks gets the Spirit Sword. Hold tight, Kurobara. Yu Yu Hakusho. But yeah, Trunks gets the Spirit Sword. So everybody's giving their energy to Trunks. That was like a sick moment just to see that. Because again, I'm looking at it like it's too much to say Goku or Vegeta. So I always have said that Future Trunks is the guy. And so this saga's already telling me, well, you know, Goku's the only other person. You know, Yamcha invented the Spirit Bomb, but he was just doing it with himself. And Goku's got the Spirit Bomb like we know. And so now here's Future Trunks getting the spirit, putting it into the sword. So I was like, I knew he was that guy. Like I knew he was like the hero, right? But then he pops back up and Fuse Goku Black's like, Trunks, like, don't you get bored of losing? And then Trunks is like, you don't get it. All I've ever wanted to do is save my community, and I've only got this far with their support. And that really, really got me because it was like, that is kind of how I've felt my whole life. But that's how I felt my whole life. My favorite character's always been Future Trunks. He's never said anything like that before, but it was just this thing about like I always felt like I really, really did know the character in that sense. And even down to the fact that like he doesn't save that world. Like it doesn't happen. Like, and just that, the way that hit me then is like what I'm feeling now amongst this death, because it kind of comes down to like you don't get to choose when you die. You don't get to choose who dies, but you get to choose how you live. So it's like, it seemed sad when I first heard that he died, in the sense that it was sad that he was still creating things that will never be finished by him now. But then I'm looking at it and I'm like, is it sad that the whole of his life he still had the drive to create? Like at a point when we know that it had nothing to do with money or clout or any of those things, that he still, like, is that actually sad? Is it actually sad that somebody got to die in the way that they lived? Like, that emphasis on journey and the decisions that you get to make on how you respond to things or how you're interacting with the world. Um, yeah, that was a thing at the time. It solidified me with the character. Yeah, that kind of melancholy. He didn't get to save the world, but he got to move on, and he managed to stay true to himself. And just again, like the color that it gave to the world, for the fact that like this is a character who now there's going to be another saga and you're not even going to see it. And look how deep they managed to make that. So I loved Super. It was just a really um it was just like, yeah, it felt like an honor, because it was like I now got to watch that in real time with all of the Japanese people at the same time, you know. Um so yeah, I think that, you know, one of the last things that I want to say is just about the health of the creators. You know, I don't want to speculate anything about the correlation between the work and how he died, but I do want to speak to that interview that I saw and the conditions that it took for him to make it. And you know, I don't want to make some thing about artificial intelligence, but I will say that I don't appreciate the fetishization of the blood, sweat, and tears that authors have to put in to create their story worlds, and that somehow fandoms crave that pain as part of that narrative to enjoy the stories. Like, if it could have been 10, 20 years more of Akira, because he was using tools which others now say are lazy. And again, for all I know, Akira hated all of these things. Chances are, you know, he's old school. He stopped drawing because he lost a penny. Like, so, you know, it could literally go either way on that one. But, you know, my nephew's an animator, and he is one of the best animators on his university course. And he has just got a 5-month placement in Japan. And, you know, I say to him, I try and get him to watch the anime Bakumon, just about the actual conditions of an animator, the conditions of mangaka, what's been happening with Oda, you know, and he's been taking the rest, and I'm glad that. But I think, you know, I don't. Hopefully, there is a positive increase in the love for the creators as human beings who need breaks, who need space, who need grace when they're creating these things, as much love as there is for the IPs themselves. Um, I think that when these authors that create these stories that are so universally loved, one thing that I've always said with Dragon Ball, that is, it's the only story I've ever seen that through one perspective is so clearly about, like, the Saiyans are a metaphor for white people, and then on another perspective the Saiyans are so clearly a metaphor for black people, and then on another perspective it's so clearly and so obviously about Asian people. But this is because Akira and some of his, you know, descendants like Oda, these are master myth tellers, and they became that way because they're master myth researchers. If you look and you understand, it's like there is a foundation of Oriental myths, a foundation of African myths, of indigenous American myths, of European myths that are in there. And the type of time and dedication and focus it takes to first consume all of that historical content. Yeah, and aside all of the non-fictional stuff that they've consumed to be able to get that in terms of non-fictional Oriental history, non-fictional African history, non-fictional European history, non-fictional American history, to be able to do that. And then on top of that, you are alchemizing it in your mind, and then you manage to create this thing and re-put it out there. It takes so much mental effort to be able to do these sorts of things that we've got to stop glamorizing the negative aspects of it that end up affecting people's health. And I think that the world that we live in is way more gracious in that sense. We've got a lot more distractions. We've got influencers who've used their platforms for good in terms of showing grace and articulating these sorts of points, where I do think we are definitely in a better place. But we're also in a world where 30, 40 years isn't that long. So the conditions that these creators were in 30, 40 years ago, some of those behaviors and consumer wants, people still want a weekly anime, which is absolutely nuts when you know what goes into creating these things. They still want weekly mangas. They still want consistent stories. And it's a fair enough want, because these stories are amazing and they are life-changing. But I just, I think I see this, I feel this, and I do think about Oda. And I think, with this, with the Wano arc. So, I've been watching One Piece for about 10 years, not read the manga. And when it was coming up to Gear 5, I remember all of the kind of like groups that I'm in or whatever, and they were saying it was better than Super Saiyan, and I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? But when I watched it, I felt it so much that obviously nothing will ever touch Super Saiyan. Ever touch Super Saiyan. It's impossible. It's the default. It's the foundation. Like in coding, it's the zero that everything comes from. But I was like, you know what? Gear 5 is better than Ultra Instinct. I'll give him that. And I'll be honest, when I seen how they rounded up the Wano arc and what Gear 5 was and what Gear 5 means spiritually about resonant frequencies and the Haitian god Joy Boy. So again, this master myth teller who's taken the Haitian god Joy Boy, which was a revolutionary god who played the drums in both war and celebration, and he's converted it into this myth which everyone from everywhere can just like resonate with. And what he did with the Super Saiyan transformations in Dragon Ball, and then Naruto's 9 Tails, and how it leads on from that, I was thinking it must be so satisfying for Akira to see someone like Oda get to this stage, because it was so clear when Gear 5 happened that was Oda's plan from the start, trying to recreate what he felt when he saw Goku go Super Saiyan for the first time. I just felt that transfer where it was like everybody else has tried to make these imitations, but you've got these people like the creators of One Piece, the creators of Naruto, who, for those of you who've watched My Hero Academia, it's like when Endeavor gets his redemption, when he becomes the number one superhero, and you're still thinking he's a bit whatever. And then at the end of that, I think it's like the end of series 3, when you think the whole thing's finished, and then that one random I can't remember where it came from, but it felt random at the time. It was like the saga was done, then this thing pops up, and then Endeavor starts riding out, and you realize he's gonna just put his whole life on the line, and you kind of get the flashback. And he was like, I was watching the number one hero, and I'm thinking, what happens when the number one hero is no longer here anymore? And so when I watched Gear 5, I got that feeling, and I was like, yeah, Akira must be so proud of Oda, and he must have, felt the same way when Naruto finished, and everybody, I don't know if, well, I mean, it didn't have the same sort of praise, but I'm sure Akira must have been so proud at that point to be like, actually see other mangaka and storytellers not just take the inspiration and give thanks, but really then give their all to try and create the same thing and pass it on forward. And so now here with his passing, it's like I'm glad that I let myself have that thought whilst Akira was still alive. So it's not just something that I'm saying now because he's passed. Like it was when the live action came out. When the live action One Piece came out, and everybody, that was decent. You got to give it a 6, 7, 8, or 9 out of 10. You got to give it. It's the best live action adaptation. And I'm thinking, Oda managed to do something that Dragon Ball hadn't done, and Akira must be so proud because we all know that there could be the sickest Dragon Ball live action. We all know that. Like the one that will not be named is basically like the biggest conspiracy theory in the world. Like, how do you make something so bad? But there's a continual line that it doesn't all rest on this one individual. And so here in this moment, now that he's passed, the fact that he as a creator still had more inside of him that he wanted to create, I also just have a reignited love for those around Akira who gave him the opportunity to feel proud about passing the torch and knowing that not only did he create a franchise that he could continuously create and adapt to over 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus, 40 plus years, that there are other complete different seeds that got planted that, have risen. And there's so much more that I actually do want to say. But with this video, I'm really inconsistent on my channel, and I've been thinking for the last 2 weeks about something that I want to make. And it's kind of like gonna be my dream project. Nintendo accepted me as a what's the term that they used? I am a authorized developer for Nintendo, so I've got a development Nintendo Switch and I can produce for it. And in this time where things have not been going very well for me, I've just been learning that craft, learning game design, and learning how to structure code that is scalable. And in the last few weeks, I've just realized that I've got the confidence and I've got the hardware so that I can make that game. And so I've just been thinking for the last 2 weeks, like, damn, I really need to think about that story now because it's the last thing between me and making it. But I had to make this video. We just had to go out. So I don't want to make any sort of promises. This is just about the love for my biggest inspiration, Akira Toriyama. I'm going to be going back over all the manga, going to be reading it all. I've got Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and I think the first 6 of Dragon Ball Super. So for everyone, let's just share in the love and the praise for one of the best stories ever told. I thank him again.